Today at the World Economic Forum was foreign policy. This morning, President Trump, along with 19 other world leaders, held a signing ceremony for the president's Board of Peace aimed at ending international conflicts. But some key American allies were not on that stage.
President Trump also seemed to diffuse tensions with European leaders, backing off from his threat of new tariffs on Europe after announcing he and NATO had reached the framework of a deal on Greenland. Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba in Washington and NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber in Greenland's capital, Nuuk. Monica, we'll start with you stateside and this framework of a future deal on Greenland. What more is President Trump saying on this today?
Yeah, he is really indicating, Kate and Zinkley, that there's a lot that still needs to be worked out, that there will be negotiations that take place in the future, that there will be conversations between the key and relevant parties, essentially to define what this is going to look like. A framework is really sort of like concepts of a plan, but it isn't necessarily an agreement or a deal that has actually been reached. But we do know what the president is taking off the table, which is the military aspect to potentially taking over Greenland. And that way, he says he's not going to use force to do it. But this opens up the question about whether the U.S. military presence on the Arctic island could expand, whether more military bases could potentially be built up and expanded upon there. Again, we are unclear on whether that is the stated goal and mission of this so-called framework, but it was the president at the outset who claimed he wanted to own and control all of Greenland. So this is certainly a change to that and a little bit of a walk back once he did back off also from threatening those tariffs on key European allies, guys.
And Ellison, let's bring you in. It's been a harrowing few weeks for Greenlanders, right? As President Trump set his sights on their land, how are they reacting today after this apparent turnaround?
They are waiting to hear more information, more details. Even the Prime Minister of Greenland has said that he does not know the details in this supposed future framework for a future agreement between President Trump and NATO Secretary General. But he said that they are willing to cooperate when it comes to Arctic security, but what they aren't willing to cross, and he said this is a red line for both Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark, is the sovereignty of this territory. In terms of the people, a lot of them are still uncertain. They don't know what to make of it. They want to see more details, and right now they still say they're not sure if they believe what President Trump is saying. We spoke to one person today who owns a hotel here in Nuuk, and he actually was setting up a generator for his hotel. It was a step he said he was taking now because of warnings from a couple days ago about where the Prime Minister said that they didn't think a U.S. military invasion would be likely, but that they also felt like they could not rule it out. He said he still feels a little bit of that nervous energy, if you will, and still wanted to be prepared because they don't know for sure what is going to happen next. They still have a lot of uncertainty. Listen to some of what he told us.
As I see it, it's more or less slave trade that you talk about, just going in, taking another country. So that's, of course, extremely offensive, and we're really glad that the EU and the Denmark threat.
A lot of people here seem to be cautiously optimistic, but again, they want to see the details. They want to know exactly what this framework of a future deal is between President Trump and the Secretary General of NATO. Kate Zinkley.
Ellison, thank you. Something that has gone well beyond a framework, Monica, is the Board of Peace. It was really a focal point of President Trump's day. Can you walk us through which countries are part of this and who exactly is in charge?
It's the president, Kate and Zinkley. He is head of it. He's the one who says he can name a potential successor, and he's the one with veto power. And the U.S. invited dozens of countries to join this so-called Board of Peace to decide how Gaza is going to be governed and rebuilt and what will happen next. So far, about 20 have accepted. You see there Russia, for instance, Israel, several other smaller countries. And you have some who have declined, like France. Host of other nations that simply have not yet responded. It's unclear exactly how large this board is going to be, but we know that they will be meeting to discuss very critical next steps for that next phase in ending the war in Gaza. Guys.
Monica Alba, Ellison Barber, thank you both.
Let's turn back to that tariff back and forth over Greenland. For more on the economic angle of all of this, we want to bring in NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans. Christine, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is denying that the tariff reversal was influenced by Wall Street panic, which we saw on Tuesday, and specifically the bond market. Can you explain what he's talking about, this sort of metric of the bond market that some think might be driving decisions at the White House?
So look, we talk about the Dow and the S&P and stocks because that's what's in our 401ks, but really the market that runs the world is the bond market. And there was this freak out when the president was promising, threatening these new tariffs, and investors around the world were selling U.S. stocks, selling the dollar, and selling bonds. Everything American they were selling. The idea being the U.S. was no longer a reliable trading partner anymore or a negotiating partner. The U.S. and the EU already had a trade deal that they decided, and then the president was going around that trade deal to threaten new tariffs. So all of that selling drove up interest rates.